Next problem, they are given two graphs. You have to see that whether these graphs meet the isomorphism properties. So first of all, you know what is required to satisfy isomorphic properties. So first of all, if we start comparing the two graphs, in the first graph A, B, C, D, you have got 4 vertices. Likewise, in the second graph, you also have got 4 vertices. So there are 4 vertices in both the graphs. The first property is satisfied. And count the number of edges in the first graph. There are 6 edges. What about the edges in the second graph? There are 7 edges. Okay, there is no one-to-one correspondence between the edges. Correct? Therefore, the two graphs are not isomorphic. So you can write that in sentence. So coming to the next question. They have given two graphs. We have to prove that the two graphs are not isomorphic. Just observe the number of vertices. 8 vertices. Here also the same 8 vertices. Count the number of edges. So you can observe there is quite differences. There are quite differences in both the graphs. The first graph, you can observe that we have got a pair of vertices of degree 4 which are not adjacent. Okay, and in the second graph you can observe that we have got a pair of vertices which are adjacent to each other and they are of degree 4. So we can clearly say that the two graphs are not isomorphic. So with this condition, the pairs of vertices of degree, they should match in each and every aspect. That is, the number of vertices should be same, number of edges should be same, and number of vertices of degree, a particular degree also must be same, and there must be symmetry between the two graphs. So in this graph, there are 2 vertices which are not adjacent and are of degree 4, whereas in the second graph, we have got 2 vertices of degree 4 but which are adjacent. Therefore, these two graphs are not isomorphic. So you can give the reason and finally state that the two graphs are not isomorphic. Coming to the next question. They have given 2 digraphs. We are supposed to check whether they are isomorphic or not. So given the directions, we have to write what the one-to-one correspondence between the vertices. So you know, one-to-one, let's write the one-to-one correspondence between the vertices. A is one-to-one correspondence with, see, you can observe, there's an edge starting from A. Okay, likewise from Q it starts. So A is one-to-one correspondence with Q. Likewise, B is one-to-one correspondence with P, right? And then you can observe the edge where it goes. C is one-to-one correspondence with the S. Okay, likewise D is one-to-one correspondence with R. So if you start writing the one-to-one correspondence between the edges, so A comma B is one-to-one correspondence with Q and P, right? And then you can observe B comma C, okay, is one-to-one correspondence with P comma S. Likewise, C comma D is one-to-one correspondence with S comma R. And finally, D comma A is one-to-one correspondence with R comma Q, right? So you can observe that there is one-to-one correspondence between the vertices and the edges, and including the directions. Hence, the given digraphs are isomorphic. Okay, so let's see the next concept, that is regarding subgraph. Okay, we'll see the concept of subgraph. First of all, let's see the definition of a subgraph. What actually is a subgraph? We can say about the two graphs, that is the two graphs G and G1. Okay, these two graphs are that means we can have two graphs G and G1, and we can say that G1 is a subgraph of G if the two conditions are satisfied, that is all the vertices and all the edges of G1 must be there in G. So how many vertices are there in G1? 4 vertices. Are these 4 vertices there in this graph? Yes. So and we should see the edges. Okay, are these edges there in the graph G? Yes, these edges are there in graph G, right? So first condition is all the vertices and edges of G1 must be there in G. Then each edge of G1 should have the same end vertices as in G. That means if this is an edge, it should be between V1 and V2 here also. Likewise V1 to V4, yes, there is an edge between the same vertices V1 to V4. And then V4 to V3, yes, and V1 to V3, yes. So we can clearly say that G1 is a subgraph of G. Okay, so we can say that every graph is a subgraph of itself, and every simple graph is a subgraph of a complete graph, right? So coming to the next concept of spanning subgraph, let's take an example. Here we have got 3 graphs. Okay, given a graph G is equal to V comma E, if there is a subgraph G1 such that V1 is equal to V, then it is called as a spanning subgraph of G. So I will repeat, given the graph G is equal to V comma E, if there is a subgraph G1, okay, which consists of the same number of vertices as that in G, same number of vertices and same number of edges as that in G, and such that V1 is equal to V. Okay, all the vertices in G1 are there in G. So then it is called as a spanning subgraph of G. So this is in the spanning subgraph, all the vertices must be there. So for example, we have taken these 3 graphs. This is the main graph. Let's compare this with this graph. Likewise, this one with this graph. You can observe there are 4 vertices as in the original graph. Okay, so we can say that this is a spanning subgraph. B graph is a spanning subgraph. What about C? C does not consist of all the vertices. A is not present in the subgraph. So we can say that it is a subgraph, but it is not a spanning subgraph. All the vertices must be there as that in the original graph in order to satisfy a spanning subgraph property. Okay. Next, let's see about induced subgraph. What is induced subgraph? Let's say we have got a graph G, which is given by V comma E pair, and suppose there is a subgraph G1, so that V1 comma E1 of G, such that every edge A comma B of G is an edge in G1 also. Okay, so then we can say G1 is a induced subgraph of G, and it is denoted by V1 because it is induced by V1. So whatever edge is present in the original graph must be there in the graph that we compare. So we can start comparing these 3 graphs. So this is the original graph, and you can observe that these are the pair of, these are vertices V1, V2, V5 and V3. So all for these vertices, are the edges correct as that in the original graph, or is there any extra edge to be added to the between the vertices? Are they same Is there symmetry between this graph to this graph? V1 to V5 there is an edge. Yes. V1 to V2 there is an edge. V2 to V5 is there an edge. Okay. V2 to V3 there is an edge, and V3 to V5 there is an edge. Suppose in case you didn't have this, so it is not called as an induced subgraph. You should have all the edges whatever is present between the vertices as that of the original graph. Then we can say it is a induced subgraph. So for example, this is a induced subgraph. Next, let's start comparing C. Is this an induced subgraph? Between V5 and V3 we do not have an edge. This is not an induced subgraph, right? Let's move to the next concept about edge disjoint and vertex disjoint subgraph. What is this edge disjoint and vertex disjoint subgraph? So let us take graph G and graph G1 and G2 be two subgraphs. So then G1 and G2, they are said to be edge disjoint if they do not have any edge in common. Then we call these two graphs as edge disjoint subgraphs. Okay, likewise we can say about the two graphs G1 and G2, which they can be called as a vertex disjoint subgraph if they do not have any vertex in common. Okay, let's take the example. So this is the original graph. These are the two graphs which I take for comparison. Okay, you can just infer that these are the three graphs. Okay, here there are 5 vertices. Here we have got 3 vertices. According to the concept of edge disjoint and vertex disjoint subgraphs, the graph G will be divided into two subgraphs, G1 and G2. And we have to decide whether these two graphs are edge disjoint or vertex disjoint. You can observe V1, V5, V2, and here we have got V5, V3 and V4. The vertex V5 repeats. It is a vertex. According to vertex disjoint, it means that they do not have any edge and any common vertex. Okay, according to the concept of edge disjoint, it means that they do not have any edge in common. Okay, so these two do not have any edge in common, right? So these two graphs are an example for edge disjoint subgraphs. What about vertex disjoint subgraph? Is it a vertex disjoint subgraph? According to the definition of vertex disjoint, they do not have any vertex in common. It means that they do not have any common edge also, right? So they do not have any common edge and any common vertex. That is the concept of vertex disjoint. So is this vertex disjoint? No. Vertex is common, right? So obviously we can say that this is not a vertex disjoint subgraph. These both are edge disjoint subgraphs. Okay, let's take a particular question. So given a graph G1, can there exist a graph G2 such that G1 is the subgraph of G2 but not a spanning subgraph of G2, and yet G1 and G2 have the same size? So this is the question. Given a graph G1, can there exist a graph G2 such that G1 is a subgraph of G2 but not a spanning subgraph of G2, and yet G1 and G2 have the same size? Same size means the number of edges. So let's take this example. V2, V1, V3. This is graph G1, and let me say V2, V1, V3, and I am maintaining the same size or the same number of edges. Okay, I am taking this example. So in this graph G1, it contains all the vertices and edges as that of G, and at least one isolated vertex here, right? So what is satisfied is we can have a subgraph of each other, but not a spanning subgraph. That means the number of vertices are not same in both the graphs. Yes, by this example it is true, right? One more isolated vertex we have got, but yet we have got the same size. That means same number of edges, right? So this is possible. Therefore, such a graph is possible. You can conclude with the explanation. Let's consider this question. They have given a graph, and we need to compare this graph G with graph G1. So this is our graph G1. According to the question, they have given two graphs. We are supposed to identify whether the first graph G1 is it a subgraph of G. Okay, and then this is your graph G. This is graph G. Okay, so first of all, before identifying whether it's an induced subgraph, we need to identify whether it's a subgraph. Okay, first of all, let's see the definition of subgraph. Subgraph means all the vertices in graph G1, whichever is there, must be included in graph G, and whatever edges are present between the same end vertices must be there as in graph G. Obviously, you can observe that graph G1 consists of these vertices V1, V3, V6, V4, V7. Likewise, it is same as in graph G, right? So, and you can observe the end vertices V1 to V3, there is an edge here also, it's the same. Again, V3 to V6, there is an edge, the same in graph G, and V3 to V4, V4 to V7, and V7 to V6. So, this is same. So, it is definitely a subgraph. That is, graph G1 is definitely a subgraph of G, based on all the conditions and definitions of subgraph. We know that all the vertices of G1 are there in G, and likewise there are edges of G1 which are also there in the graph G that we are comparing, and further each edge in G1 has the same end vertices as that of G. Therefore, we can say that the graph G1 is a subgraph of G. So, you can write that in statements. Next, to find out whether it is an induced subgraph, we need to check out whether G1 is an induced subgraph of G, and whether is it a spanning subgraph of G. Okay, so first of all, for the definition of induced subgraph, as we know, whatever edge is there in G, there must be an edge. Okay, we have to check that every edge of G is an edge of G1. Therefore, we can say that G1 is a induced subgraph. We have checked that these edges are there in the original graph which we are comparing, that is graph G. Therefore, graph G1 is an induced subgraph. Between these vertices, these many edges must be there also in the original graph. And if there are extra edges, that also must be included. But here, it is as it is. There is a symmetry between the edges to vertices. Therefore, it is a induced subgraph. Therefore, G1 is an induced subgraph. Next, we have to check whether this graph G1 is a spanning subgraph. As you know, in spanning subgraph, we have to concentrate on the number of vertices. All the vertices of G1, okay, all the vertices which are there in the original graph must be there in the graph that we are comparing. All the vertices in the original graph G must be there in the graph G1. Can you observe that some of the vertices are missing? Yes, therefore V1, the number of vertices, or we can say V1 is not equal to V, where V1 represents the number of vertices in G1, and V represents the number of vertices in the graph G. Therefore, we can say that G1 is not a spanning subgraph of G. So, you can give that in definitions. Next, coming to the next problem. So, here they are given a graph. We have to determine, or we have to find out two edge disjoint subgraphs and two vertex disjoint subgraphs. So, in the previous discussion, I have told you about edge disjoint subgraphs and vertex disjoint subgraphs. So, edge, we can divide this graph into two edge disjoint subgraph as, we can have this graph and RST is another graph. Okay, these two graphs do not have any edge in common. Do not have any edge in common, right? Do not have any edge in common. Therefore, we can say that this is a edge disjoint subgraph. How we can draw the vertex disjoint subgraphs for this original graph? There should be, in order for a vertex disjoint subgraph, there should not be any vertex in common as well as there should not be any edge in common. So we can have two vertex disjoint subgraphs as, so these are edge disjoint, so I will be naming them, and the vertex disjoint subgraphs are as shown below. So I am dividing this graph, original graph, into two vertex disjoint subgraphs. One is PQ and RST. So that time no vertex is in common, there is no edge also in common. So it forms a vertex disjoint subgraph. So these two are vertex disjoint subgraphs. So next let's see the operations of graphs. So first operation that can be performed is finding the union of two graphs. That is, let us take graph G1 as the set, it's V1 consists of vertex set and edge set, and let's take graph G2 which consists of vertex set V2 and edge set E2. So the graph whose vertex set is V1 union V2 and edge set is E1 union E2 is called union of G1 and G2. Okay, and we denote it by G1 union G2, the union of two graphs. So union of two graphs is nothing but union of all the vertices in the two graphs plus the edges in the two graphs. We can denote it like this. So this is the first operation on a particular graph. Next, coming to intersection of the two graphs. Intersection of two graphs. So in the intersection, the vertex set of the first one, intersection vertex set of the second one, we can say that the intersection of the two vertices must not be null. Okay, intersection of the two vertices must not be null, and it is nothing but the intersection of the two graphs is the intersection of the two vertices as well as intersection of the two edges, with the condition that V1 intersection V2 must not be null. And next, coming to symmetric difference between the two graphs, symmetric difference. We have three operations. One is union of the two graphs, intersection of the two graphs, followed by symmetric difference of the two graphs. So we denote the symmetric difference by delta, and the symmetric difference is nothing but it is also called as the ring sum of the two graphs. So let's consider vertex set V1 union V2 and edge set E1 delta E2, where E1 delta E2 denotes the symmetric difference between the edges. Okay, it represents the set of all those elements. So what is this E1 delta E2 is? It represents set of all those elements which are there in E1 or E2, E1 or E2, but not in both. So we can write minus E1 intersection E2. So this is the symmetric difference. So for symmetric difference, you are taking the union of the vertices and the symmetric difference between the edges, and symmetric difference denotes the set of all the elements or set of the edges which are there in E1 or E2 but which are not there in both. Okay, so the symmetric difference between the two graphs is denoted by G1 delta G2, which is nothing but the set V1 union V2 and E1 delta E2. So this is how we can represent the symmetric difference. So these are the three operations, and the symmetric difference is also called as a ring sum. So let me give you an example to illustrate the same. Let's take a particular graph. So we have got vertices V1, V2, V5, V4 and vertex set V3. So this is the first graph that I consider it, and it is labeled as G1. And let me take the next graph, which consists of V1, V2, V6, V3, V4. Okay, so this is the graph G2. So let's compare these two graphs. So first of all, let's find out the union and intersection as well as ring sum from this graph. So what will be G1 union U2? How do you find the union of the two graphs? So union of the two graphs is found out by G1 union G2. Okay, so let us take these two graphs. So how do you find out the union is? You have to combine the vertex set as well as the edge set. So how will the union of the two graphs look like? So let's combine the two vertices. It will be V1, V2, then you will have V6. Okay, V1 will be connected to V4 as well as V5. Then V2 will be connected to V4. Okay, V2 will be connected to V3 also. V3 will be connected to V4 too. And V1 will be connected to V3. Okay, and V5 is connected to V4. So up till here it looks like this. Okay, so far it looks like this. Still more we have got connections from V6 to V3. Okay, so this is the union of the two graphs, and it is represented by G1 union G2. What I have done is I have combined the union of all the vertices in the two graphs plus the edge set of the two graphs. So next, based on these two graphs, let us find out the intersection of the two graphs. So it is represented by G1 intersection G2, and it takes the vertices which are common and edge set which are common. So you can observe that in the two graphs V1, V2 they are in common, plus V4, V3 are in common. So so we are not supposed to take V5 and V6, only the vertices which are in common plus the edge set which are in common. So it looks G1 intersection G2 looks like this. I am just taking the two graphs in comparison. So you will be getting V1, V2, then you have got V2 to V4 there is an edge, V2 to V3 also there is an edge. So from V1 to V4 there is an edge. Okay, likewise V1 to V3 there is an edge, and V4 to V3 you have got another edge. V2 to V4 you can V2 to V4 is also an edge, but you can observe that, see, I should not include this edge. Why? Because there is no edge from V1 to V3 in this graph. Okay, but there is an edge from V1 to V3 in this graph. I should not include, but I need to include only the edges which are in common to both the graphs. For example, V1 and V1 to V2 there is an edge in this graph, as well as it is also an edge in the graph to G2, V1 to V2, right? So I have included only those common edge set. So the graphs looks like this. You have just got, I will be rewriting it, V1, V2, V4, V3, and you have got from V2 to V4. Okay, so this is the intersection of the two graphs. Intersection of two graphs looks like this. So this is G1 intersection G2. So how do you write the symmetric difference G1 delta G2? What is G1 delta G2? So it represents the vertices which are you are combining all the vertices in the two graphs. For example, you have got V1 to V6. You are including all of them. Okay, but the edge set is nothing but the edges which are there in both but not common to both. Okay, for example, which are the edges which are common? You can observe that V1, V2 is common. Okay, and V2 to V4 the edge is common, and V2 to V3 also edge is common. And we have got edge from V1 to V4 which are in common. Okay, and V4 to V3 also which are common. Okay, and other edges has to be included. You can observe that these are common to both the graphs. So according to symmetric difference of the edges, we are not supposed to take the edges which are common to both the graphs, but we need to include all other edges in the symmetric difference of the graphs, and we also have to include all the vertices which are there in both the graphs. Okay, so let's write down the symmetric difference. So we'll have V1, V2. I just represent the vertices first. We have got V5 plus we have got V4, we have got V3 and V6. Right, so I have represented all the vertices which are there in both the graphs. Now let me include only the edges which are not common to both the graphs. For example, V1 to V5 and V5 to V4. Okay, and then from V2 to V2 V4 is there. Then which is the edge? V1 to V3. I can include this edge. V1 to V3. This edge is not common to both. Okay, then I have an edge V2 to V6. Likewise, V6 to V3. Okay, so this is your symmetric difference between the two graphs and is represented by G1 delta G2. So next, let's see another operations on graphs, that is decomposition. Decomposition. So we can say that the graph G is decomposed into two subgraphs G1 and G2 if G1 union G2 is G and G1 intersection G2 is a null graph. Okay, so we can say that graph G is decomposed or partitioned into two subgraphs G1 and G2 if G1 union G2, that is by combining both the graphs we get the original graph, and as well as the intersection, there is no such intersection, or the intersection between the two graphs is a null graph. So next, let's move to another operation, that is deletion. Okay, deletion on graphs. So let's say V is a vertex in the graph and in the graph G, okay, and G minus V, that is after removal of the vertex, this denotes the subgraph of G obtained by deleting V, and all the edges incident on V, and all the edges incident on V from G. So this subgraph G minus V is called as the vertex deleted subgraph. Vertex deleted subgraph. So let me repeat. So if V is a vertex in the graph G, okay, and you are deleting a particular vertex, and that denotes a subgraph of G obtained by deleting that vertex and all the edges incident on that vertex. Okay, then subgraph G minus V obtained by that deletion of the vertex is called vertex deleted subgraph. Likewise, you also have got, see, before that let's denote what is V1. V1 is the entire set of vertices minus deletion of that particular vertex. Okay, so let's move on to edge deleted subgraph. What is edge deleted subgraph? So after definition of these, I will be giving an example for each one of them. So edge deleted subgraph is if E is an edge in the graph G and G minus E denotes the subgraph of G obtained by deleting the edge E from G. So such a subgraph G minus E is referred to as edge deleted subgraph. Okay, so we have got an edge E in the graph and we are going to delete a particular edge from the graph, that turns to be a subgraph, and that particular subgraph obtained by deleting of that edge is called as the edge deleted subgraph. So let's take an example to illustrate both the concepts. of vertex deleted subgraph and edge deleted subgraph. So this is a graph where E is the edge between A and B, and we have got these many vertices in the graph. Okay, so this is the graph, original graph G. And let's start deleting a particular vertex B. So what is the resultant graph? So we are going to delete all the edges also incident on this vertex. So the graph will look like A to B, then we have got C, and just we have got vertex D, all the edges incident on D. So this will be the graph obtained by deletion of that vertex, or it is called as a vertex deleted subgraph. We are getting a subgraph, right? It's a subgraph, and whatever vertices are there in this graph is also there here, and between the vertices there are edges, corresponding edges, which is also there in this original graph. Therefore, it forms a subgraph by deletion of that particular vertex and edges incident on the vertex. So it is called as a vertex deleted subgraph. So next, let's find out what is meant by edge deleted subgraph. Okay, what is edge deleted subgraph? So let's take this graph. If you try to delete a particular edge, so we have named this edge as E over here. So let's start deleting this edge. So what is the resultant graph? So you can observe that this is the edge deleted subgraph. There was an edge here, I have deleted that edge. The resultant graph becomes a subgraph by having all the vertices which are also there in the original graph, and no extra edges, all those edges are there and between the same end vertices. Therefore, it forms the subgraph with the edge deleted. So it is called as the edge deleted subgraph. Okay, next let's move to another operation on graphs, that is complement of a subgraph. How do you find out the complement of a subgraph? So far we have studied about union, intersection, symmetric difference, decomposition, deletion, and now let's study about complement of a subgraph. So given a graph G and we have got a subgraph G1 of G, and this subgraph of G obtained by deleting from the original graph all the edges that belong to G1, okay, is called as the complement of G1 in G, and we denote it by G minus G1. So what we are going to do in this complement of a subgraph is we are going to get a subgraph, and that subgraph is nothing but you are deleting from the original graph all the edges which are there in your subgraph G1. So that forms the complement of G1, and it is denoted by G minus G1. So all the edges which are there in G1 you are deleting it and including all other edges which are there in the original graph. So for example, let me give you an example to illustrate the same. Let me take this example. This is the graph. Okay, we have got this graph. So what will be the complement of the subgraph? So let's denote G1 as a subgraph of G, and which are shown in here. So this is the graph G. Okay, so now how do you write the complement of G1? Complement of G1 we denoted by G complement. So what is our original graph? So this is our original graph G, okay, and let G1 be the graph. Let me denote here G1 graph, and let it be a subgraph. So Okay, so this is the subgraph G1. Fine. What we are doing is we are taking this original graph and we are deleting all the edges which are there in G1 and including the rest of the edges in G complement. So which are the rest of the edges that we have to include is this one, right, and this one too, plus this one, this edge, and all other edges like this. So I am not including this particular edge. Rest all the edges are included in the G complement. So that is your G complement. So from the original graph you are getting a subgraph, and the subgraph once again obtained by deleting all the edges which are there in G1, and that is with reference to G, and including all the rest of the edges from the original graph in the resultant subgraph. So the resultant subgraph is called as the complement of the subgraph. Okay, so this is your complement. So next, if I want to say about complement of a simple graph, so simple graph, as you know, is a subgraph of a complete graph Kn. So if the simple graph is of order n, okay, then the complement is the complement of G in Kn. So what is Kn? Kn is your complete graph. So the complement of the graph in Kn is called as complement of G. So we are denoting G as a simple graph of order n. The complement in the complete graph, so is the complement is called complement of a simple graph, and it is denoted by G complement. So the G complement of simple graph, the n vertices, is a graph obtained by deleting all the edges in Kn which belongs to G. So G complement is Kn minus G. So all the edges which are there in the complete graph, you are actually deleting all the edges in the complete graph which belong to the original graph or the simple graph. Okay, and including the rest of the edges. So it becomes Kn delta G. So we can write it as Kn delta G. So obviously Kn, G and G complement, they have the same vertex set, right? So if I want to illustrate this, let's take an example of the complete graph K4. So how do we denote K4? As 4 vertices, and there are edges between each and every vertex set. So this is K4. Okay, so this is your K4 complete graph. So simple graph of order 4, how we can denote simple graph of order 4? So simple graph is a graph without loops and multiple edges. Okay, and you can, just we can have this as a simple graph. Okay, just I am connecting those 4 points. This is the simple graph G. Got it? So how do we denote the complement of the graph G? So we have to delete all the edges which are there in the complete graph. Okay, and include all those edges which are there in the original graph. That is, so your G complement will be nothing but, so you are going to delete all these edges. Okay, all these edges, it is Kn minus G. So from the complete graph you are going to delete all the edges in this graph. So this will be deleted, this will be deleted, this one too. So rest is, you have to include this one, you have to include this one, you have to include this one. That's all, right? So G complement is from the complete graph you are deleting all the edges that are there in the graph G. So that will be G complement. So G complement is this one. Okay, so this is your G complement. Let G be a simple graph of order n, and if the size of G is 56, the size of G complement is given to be 80, what is value of n? So for this we know that G complement is nothing but the number of, excluding the number of edges in the particular graph. So it is given by Kn minus G, and you know that the size of G complement is the number of edges in the complete graph minus number of edges in the particular graph G. So where G is the subgraph of the complete graph Kn, and G complement is obtained by deleting all the edges in the subgraph and taking out all the rest of the edges which are there in the complete graph. So this value of G complement is given in the question. It is value is 80, and size of Kn, as you know, it is given by n into n minus 1 by 2 minus size of G. What is size of G? It is 56. So we will be getting it as, or we can say this as n into n minus 1 is nothing but 160. Okay, 160 plus, you just multiply this, plus 112, or n into n minus 1 will be nothing but 272, right? And how we can split this up? Basically you can say that this is nothing but 16 into 17, right? This product, these two terms get you the value of 272, and therefore we can say that the value of n is 17. So you can write this as reverse, 17 into 16. Okay, so the value of n is 17. So that is what we have to find out. Coming to the next question, if there is a simple graph G of order n and it is isomorphic to its complement G complement, so that n or n minus 1 is a multiple of 4. So what we assume is these graphs, okay, G and G complement will be this graph obtained from the complete graph K4. We have seen this example. Let us take this example for this question. So obviously the graph G is approximately equal to G complement, right? So why I am saying like this is because both G and G complement, they have the same number of edges. You can observe how many edges are there here? 3 edges. Likewise, G complement has got the same number of edges as that of G. So I can write it as G is approximately equal to G complement, where both the graphs have the same number of edges. And also the total number of edges, what is there in both the graphs, is equivalent to the number of edges in the complete graph. 6, right? There are 6 edges here also. So total number of edges in the graph G and G complement is equal to the number of edges in the complete graph. How many edges are there in complete graph? It has got n into n minus 1 by 2 edges. So what about the individual graphs G and G complement? Will have got n into n minus 1 by 4 edges, right? And this must be a positive integer, correct? So that means that n or n minus 1 is a multiple of 4. So if you take the value of n as 4, we will get 4 into 3, which is divisible by 4, that is 12 is divisible by 4, or 4 divides 12 correctly. So therefore we can get it as a positive integer. That means one has to be a multiple of 4, the other need not be, or the other has to be multiple of 4, or n need not be a multiple of 4. At least one of them will be a multiple of 4, if in order to have this as a positive integer. So that is what we have proved. Either n or n minus 1 will be a multiple of 4. For suppose in case we have got n value as 3 into 2, okay, that is 6 by 4. It does not divide by 4 exactly, so we will not get an integer. but since it has to be a positive integer, okay, it has to be a positive integer, so either one of them will be a multiple of 4, and that is what we have proved as per the question. So that n or n minus 1 is a multiple of 4. So coming to the next concept of walks and its classification. So we'll see what is a walk. So talking about the definition of walk, we have seen all the definitions or definitions about. So we'll be seeing about definitions of walk, trail, as well as circuit and path and cycle here. So first of all, we'll see about walk. Let G be a graph. Okay, let G be a graph having at least one edge. So here we have assumed an example. This is the graph. So in graph G, we can consider alternate sequence of vertices and edges of the form. One will be having either a vertex and then we will be having an edge, and the coming to the next we have vertex, next vertex and next edge. Okay, likewise up till EKBM, let's say. So which starts at the first one vertex and ends with the other vertex. Okay, between them we have got edges in sequence which are incident on the vertices. So such a sequence is called as a walk. In a walk, a vertex or an edge can appear more than once. Okay, that is the property. The vertex or the edge can appear more than once. So what is the definition of a walk? Walk is nothing but it's a sequence of alternate sequence of vertices and edges which begins and ends with the vertices, and which is such that each edge is incident on the vertices preceding and following the sequence. So such a sequence is called as a walk. And what we can say about the length? So the number of edges present in the walk is called as a length. So consider this graph. Okay, what is the length of this walk? So is this a walk? Yes, we can say the sequence V1, E1, V2, E2, okay, V1, E1, V2, E2, V3, E8, V6. So they are ending with the vertices and between them we have got edges. So this entire thing follows a walk of length. What is the length? How many edges are there? Length 3. Okay, likewise we can have another sequence which is a walk, that is V1, E4, V5, E3, V2, E2 and V3, E5, then V5, E6, V4. Okay, so this entire thing can be a walk. So it actually need not include all the vertices, but it should start with the one vertex and end with another vertex, and in between the sequence vertex or edge can appear more than once. So that is a walk, and here we have got a walk of length 5. There are 5 edges, right? So like this we have got many sequences of that which can be a walk. So the vertex through which the walk begins is called as the initial vertex, and the vertex in which the walk ends is called as the final vertex or terminus. And next concept is we have got open walk and closed walk. What actually is this closed walk or open walk? So a walk that begins and ends at the same vertex is called as the closed walk. So for example, we can have a closed walk, that is V1, E1, V2, E3, okay, V5, E4 and then V1. So this is a closed walk. It starts at the same vertex and ends at the same vertex. Okay, so this is the closed walk. What about an open walk? A walk which is not closed is called as a open walk, or a open walk is a walk that begins and ends at 2 different vertices. Okay, that begins and ends at 2 different vertices. For example, we can have an open walk as V1, E1, V2, E2, V3, then I can have E5, V5. So it starts at V1, ends at V5. So this is an open walk. It's a walk which begins and ends at two different vertices. So next concept is about trails and circuits. So what is a trail and what is a circuit? So if in an open walk, so it should be an open walk, and you know, an open walk is a walk in which which begins and ends at two different vertices. So a trail is an open walk in such a way that no edge appears more than once. Okay, no edge appears more than once. So what is the difference between a trail and a circuit? So in a circuit, it is a closed walk. When compared to trail, trail is an open walk in which no edge appears, whereas in which no edge appears more than once, whereas circuit is a closed walk in which no edge appears more than once. Okay, so trail is a open walk, circuit is a closed walk. So let me give an example. Let's take this picture. What can you say whether it is a trail or not? So it starts from V1, E1, V2, E3, and then again V5. Then again you can see E3 is again repeated. That means no edge should not be repeated in case of trail, right? It should not be repeated, but edges are repeated. You can see the bidirection. Therefore, it is not a trail. So what about this example? So it starts from V1, E4, V5, V2, E2, V3, E5, E3, then V5, E6. So what is this can be repeated, and moreover in a trail it is an open walk. You can observe there are they end with different vertices at the terminus as well as initial. So it is an open walk, yes, and no edge is being repeated. Therefore, it is a trail. So next, let's see about circuit. I am taking this example. Let's compare whether which one of them are circuit. So as you know by the definition of circuit, it is a closed walk. Here, if you take this example, is it a closed walk? First of all, we need to check for determination of circuit. We start with V1, E1, V2, E3, V5. Again, E3 is being repeated. Edges are repeated, so it is not a circuit. Next, if we take this example, it starts from V1, V2, E3, then V5, V3, E7, V4, E6, V5, E4, V1. Yes, it is a closed walk and no edges are repeated. Therefore, it is a circuit. Okay. So next, let's see the concept of path and cycle. So what is a path and what is a cycle? I have taken certain examples. So path is a trail. So basically it should be a trail, that is it should be an open walk in which no edge appears more than once. So it is a trail in which no vertex appears more than once. So that means overall in path no vertex or no edge appears more than once. And it should be an open walk. Whereas a cycle is a circuit. So when we say it is a circuit, it should be a closed walk and in which the terminal vertex does not appear as initial vertex and no internal vertex is repeated. So the intermediate vertices should not repeat, and as well as the terminal vertex does not appear as internal vertex. So they should be different. Okay. So that is a cycle. Cycle is a circuit in which the terminal vertex does not appear as internal vertex and the intermediate vertices must be different, and that means it should not be repeated. That is a cycle. So let's take this example. You can say that this follows from V1, E1, V2, E3, V5, E5, V3, E7, V4. Is it an open walk? Yes, it is an open walk. And are the edges repeated? No edges repeated. Likewise, is any vertex repeated? No, not even the vertex is repeated. So we can say that it is a path, right? So let's take the next example. So it starts from V1, walk starts from V1, E4, V5, E3, V2, E2, V3, E5, again V5, E6, V4. So the vertices are repeated, and even though it is an open walk, vertices are repeated. Okay, edges are not repeated, so it satisfies open walk property, but it is not a path. Okay, so next let's see these two examples. So in the first figure, the walk starts from V2, E2, V3, E5, V5, E3, V2. So it is a closed walk. That means it starts and ends at the same vertex V2. No edges are repeated. Next, if we say about the intermediate vertices, they are not repeated, right? Intermediate vertices are V3, V5. They are different. The cycle, it goes in the different manner. That is, we have no vertex repeated in between. Likewise, there is no terminal vertex which appears as the internal vertex. So this is a terminal vertex. We not have V2 anywhere in between. Therefore, it is a cycle because it is also a closed walk and it satisfies the properties. So next, if we say about this example, the walk starts from V1, E1, V2, E3, V5, then E5, V3, E7, V4, E6, again V5. Okay, and moreover, you can say that there is another edge, it starts from here. Therefore, it is not at all a cycle. First of all, why? Because the vertex is repeated, or we can say that this is, if we say this is a cycle, okay, it has to happen that it should be a circuit first of all. That means it should be a closed walk. It is not at all a closed walk, it ends here. And directly we can conclude that it is not a circuit, right? It is not a circuit, or else we can say that it is what we can say, it is not a cycle basically. Why? Because the terminal vertex has appeared as the internal vertex because it stops here. Somewhere in between it has crossed V5 and then ended up back to V5. So this does not follow or does not satisfy a cycle property, whereas this is the example for a cycle. So a walk can be open or closed, and in a walk a vertex or an edge can appear more than once. Whereas a trail is an open walk in which a vertex can appear more than once, but an edge cannot appear more than once. So a circuit is a closed walk in which a vertex can appear more than once, but an edge cannot appear more than once. This is just a summary of whatever is done so far. And next we have to tell about path and cycle. A path is an open walk in which neither a vertex nor an edge can appear more than once. So every path is a trail, but a trail need not be a path. And every cycle is a circuit, but a circuit need not be a cycle. Okay. So next we will see some example problems. Let us say this is the question. So for the graph in the figure that I will show you, we have to say whether the sequence or indicate the nature of the walks, whether it's a closed walk or whether it's a path or a trail or a cycle or a circuit. This is what we have to find out. Let's say this is the graph. I've got vertices V5, E4, V4 and vertex V3, E3, V1, E1, V2, E2, E7. Okay. Let us say this is the graph. So according to the sequence, we have to determine what kind of walk it is. So it starts from V1 and ends at V2. So it is an open walk and no edge. Okay. No edge should appear more than once. When we say about open walk, no edge should appear more than once, or that is if we tell in terms of trail, okay, basically trail. Okay, what is the concept of a trail? Trail is basically open walk in which no edge appears more than once. But here you can observe E2 edges are repeated, therefore it is not a trail. Okay, it is a open walk, and in an open walk, you know, they terminate at two different vertices. That's all, and it is a sequence of vertices and edges. But it is not a trail because it is, even though it is an open walk, but the edges are repeated. According to definition, no edge should appear more than once, therefore it is not a trail. So coming to the next sequence, V4, E7, V1. So you can observe the nature of these vertices. In between there are vertices, okay, V4, E7, V1. These and you can observe that no edge is repeated more than once, it is a trail. And why I am telling a trail is because the major property of trail is satisfied, plus it is an open walk. Okay, it is a trail, but can you check whether it is a path? What is a path? Path is a trail in which no vertex appears more than once, but here you can observe that vertices are repeated. Okay, vertices are repeated, therefore it is a trail, but it is not a path. Okay, so next let's see another question. Consider the graph, find all the paths from vertex A to vertex R. So this is the graph. They are supposed to find out all the paths from vertex A and also indicate their lengths. So there are 4 paths from A to R, that is A, E1, B, E4, R, that is one path. And next you have got A, E1, B, E3, Q, E6, R. Okay, this is the another path. And next path is, can have A, E2, P, E5, Q, E6, R. Okay, and then you can have A, E2, P, E5, Q, E3, B, E4, R. So we have got 4 paths. A, E2, P, E5, okay, Q, E3, B, E4, R. So these are the 4 paths from A to R. So let's find out the length of these walks or paths. So these paths contain 2 edges, right? 2 edges, likewise 3 edges, and finally 4 edges. So their lengths will be 2, 3 and 4 respectively. So this is how you can conclude. Particular question where we need to prove that a path with the end vertices is of length n minus 1. So as you know, a path is a open walk, right, wherein the walk starts from one vertex and ends at the different vertex. And it is an open walk in which neither a vertex nor an edge can appear more than once. So every path is a tree. You know this concept. So based on this, we know that in a path, every vertex except the last vertex is followed by precisely one edge, right? So every vertex except the last vertex is followed by one edge. Like we can have V1, then we can have one edge followed by V1, then likewise V2, so on. Except the last vertex, we do not have any edge that follows from this particular vertex. Therefore, if the path has got n vertices, okay, there must be n minus 1 edges, right? And its length will be n minus 1. So we have proved that a path with n vertices is of length n minus 1. Okay, let's take the next question. If the cycle has n vertices, it has got n edges. As you know, in a cycle, it is a closed walk. It is a closed walk, okay, something like this. It is a closed walk. The cycle, it starts from one vertex and ends at the same vertex, but neither a vertex nor edge can appear more than once. So if the cycle has got n vertices, so let's say n vertices, we have to prove that it has got n edges. Obviously we know that every vertex is followed by one edge, like including the last vertex also, it is followed by one edge in a cycle. Therefore, if the cycle has got n vertices, so you can observe how many vertices are there? 4 vertices. How many edges? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 edges. So if the cycle has got n vertices, obviously there will be n edges in a cycle. That is what we have to prove. If a cycle has got n vertices, it has got n edges. Okay, coming to the last question. The question is, degree of every vertex in a cycle is 2. Obviously, we know that in a cycle, exactly 2 edges are incident on a vertex, every vertex, right? One edge through which it can enter the vertex and the other edge through which it can leave the vertex, enter and exit. So exactly 2 edges will be there on each and every vertex. So obviously the degree of every vertex in a cycle has to be 2. So that is how we can write it in terms of statements. The next question is, let G be a cycle on n vertices like this. Let us assume there are 5 vertices and it is a cycle. It starts from A and ends at A. It is a closed walk. Prove that G is self-complementary if and only if n is 5. Okay, this is the question. So we know that for a cycle, okay, if the order is 5, that means if the number of vertices are 5, let's say A, B, C, D, E, and there are so many edges A, B, B, C, C, D, D, E and E, A. So these are the edges. So G complement, what will be G complement? G complement are all the edges which are not there in this graph. That is, you will have an edge from A to C, from B to D, from C to E, right, from A to D, and from E to B. Okay, so you will have edges AC, CE, then EB, you will have BD and DA. So these are the edges in G complement when you are inferring from graph G. Whatever edges which are not there in graph G will be there in G complement. So G complement is cycle with these vertices and these edges A, C, CE, EB, BD and DA. So you can write them as, these are the edges AC, CE, EB, BD and DA. So these are the edges in the complement graph, and it is easy to check that G and G complement, they are isomorphic. Clearly they are isomorphic, you know, in terms of vertices and edges, and there are edges between the same vertex. So they are isomorphic, G and G complement. So now suppose we have G is a cycle with n vertices and G is self-complementary. So we know that the number of edges in both the graph G and G complement, since they are isomorphic, we know that the number of edges are exactly, it will be the same, and it is equal to n into n minus 1 by 4. So and which is nothing but the value of n, that is the number of vertices, right? So what we can infer from this question, that what will be the value of n? What will be the value of n? So first of all, when can we say this as self-complementary graph is a simple graph which is isomorphic to its complement. Obviously, we have got a graph which is isomorphic, right? A simple graph G which is isomorphic to its complement, G complement, is called self-complementary graph. So for example, I will just give you the illustration of self-complementary graph. Let us take this graph A, B, D and C, okay, and the another graph A, B, okay, C, D. These are the two graphs. So we can say that the first graph is self-complementary graph with 4 vertices, right? It's self-complementary. So simple graph which is isomorphic to its complement, G complement, is called self-complementary graph. So for this graph, this can be the self-complementary graph. Okay, so coming back to our question, we have got a self-complementary graph And in a self-complementary graph, we also know that how many edges will be there in G and G complement, how many edges are there. For example, in this we have got 5 edges, here 5 edges, right? So it is equal to the number of vertices. How many vertices are there? 5. So the number of edges in a self-complementary graph, or number of edges in both the graphs, as we know, is given by n into n minus 1 by 4, which is nothing but equal to the number of vertices. So what will be the value of n? So if we find out the value of n is n minus 1 is equal to 4, that means we get n is equal to 5, right? So let's take the next question. Given G is a bipartite graph, we know what is a bipartite graph with two bipartites, and wherein the first bipartite vertex joins with the edge onto the second bipartite. This show that G has no, we have to show that G has no cycle of odd length. Okay, let's assume that G is a bipartite. That means we can partition the vertex set V into two disjoint sets, that is two disjoint sets or bipartites, so that each edge of G joins a vertex in V1, okay, joins a vertex in V1 to its vertex to V2. So let V0, V1, V2, so let us denote V0, V1, V2 and so on, Vm, V0, okay, be a cycle. So we are taking a cycle, we are just taking the opposite, okay, we are assuming that there is a cycle in the graph G and that V0 is in V1. So this is our assumption. So then V1 will be in V2, likewise V2 will be in V1, so on V3 will be in V2, so just the alternate sequence, because they are bipartites and it is a bipartite graph. So thus the vertices in the cycle, they belong to V1, right? So if you start from here, the cycle comes back to V2. So all the cycle in the sense will come back to the vertex at V1 itself, right? So the vertices in a cycle, they belong to V1 and V2 alternative, correct? All the vertices, they belong to either V1 or V2. So since the terminal vertex of the cycle is V0, right? See we have assumed a cycle. Since the terminal vertex is V0 and it is in V1, in vertex at V1, so the number of edges belonging to the cycle, it cannot be an odd number, correct? Because if you take a cycle, it has to come back to same vertex, or the number will be either 2 or 4 in terms of even numbers. It cannot be odd numbers at all. So what we have taken is, we have taken the opposite, that is a cycle, and we have proved that there is no cycle of odd length, right? That is what we have to prove. We can write it in terms of statements. Since G is a bipartite, we can partition the set vertex set V into V1 and V2 disjoint sets, okay, so that each edge of G joins a vertex in V1 to its vertex 2 in V2, and let V0 up till V0, V1, V2 up till V0 be a cycle in G, and we assume that V0 is in vertex at V1. So obviously V1 will be in vertex at V2, likewise V2 will be in vertex at V1 and so on alternatively. So the vertices in the cycle, they belong to V1 and V2 vertex sets. So since the terminal vertex V0 and it is in V1, the number of edges that belong to the cycle, they cannot be an odd number, they cannot be 3 or 5 or 7. So G has no cycle of odd length. So you can write all these in statements and finally say that G has no cycle of odd length. Let's take the next question. If G is a simple graph with no cycles, prove that G has at least one pendant vertex. So I am assuming this example. Okay, we are taking just the opposite with cycles. Okay. So consider a path. Let's say this is a path P in graph G which has maximum vertices. So let's say U is the end vertex of P and it has got some neighbors. So let us assume there are two neighbors in this path. So obviously V and V dash, they are neighbors, they belong to the path, correct? And you know what is a path? You know the definition of path, it is an open walk, right? And the edges UV, V dash and V dash U, they form a cycle. This is not possible. Why? Because the graph G does not contain cycle. Hence, you must have only one neighbor, right? You must have just one neighbor, exactly one neighbor, and that is nothing but a pendant vertex. So, U has to be a pendant vertex. Therefore, the graph G has at least one pendant vertex. So, you can write that in sentence. Let me repeat. Consider a path P in G which has got maximum vertices. So, let U be the end vertex of P. Then, every neighbor of U, it belongs to P. So, let us say there are two neighbors. U has at least two neighbors, V and V dash. And they both belong to P. So, the edges UV, then V dash and V dash U, they form a cycle, right? UV, V dash U, they form a cycle. So, this is not possible because the graph has no cycles. So, you must have at least one neighbor which is having a pendant vertex, so that you can avoid cycles. Therefore, graph G has at least one pendant vertex. So, this is how we can prove. So, coming to the next question is somewhat similar to the previous one, wherein they have told you a simple graph in which the degree of every vertex is at least 2 must have a cycle. So, let us assume the same graph. So, let us assume that there is a path and which has maximum number of vertices. You have to write like this in statements. Okay, let us consider a path P in graph G. So, that is the first statement. Next, let U be the end vertex of the path, and then every neighbor of U belongs to P. Since the degree of every vertex in G is at least 2, you can observe that degree of every vertex in path P or in the graph G is at least 2, and as such at least 2 neighbors we are taking V and V dash, both of them belong to the path. Therefore, this UV, V dash U, they form a cycle, right? Thus, in a graph there must be at least one cycle. So, that is the proof. So, you can start with the description, that is, consider a path P in the graph G which has maximum vertices. Let U be the end vertex of path, and then every neighbor also belongs to the path. Since the degree of every vertex, okay, is 2, so it must have 2 neighbors V and V dash which belongs to P. Thus, the edges UV, V dash and V dash U, they constitute a cycle. Therefore, the graph G must have at least one cycle.